Yo, what is good, y'all? Welcome back to another KD Multimedia conversation here on Zoom. I am super happy to bring on Matt Ducharme. He is the head women's basketball coach at my grad school alma mater, UMass Dartmouth. Matt, appreciate you coming on for real. And just wanted to ask, how you feeling today, bro?
Feeling great today. It's almost the holiday season, almost the end of 2020. So that's always good things. And
Yeah.
our season's coming up, which is amazing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can't be here soon enough. I know that out of all the programs I follow from both of my alma maters, I always follow the women's basketball team super closely. So that is no coincidence. I mean, Matt is a friend of mine now at this point. Like I stated, went to UMass Dartmouth for grad school. I also was a graduate assistant in their athletic communications department there. That's kind of how we crossed paths. So just a little bit of context for y'all watching. But as far as how this idea came up, really just about recruiting. I remember, Matt, you and I had texted a little bit when I was like, hey, I'm doing all these high school student athlete videos, but I think it would be cool to have the perspective of, a recruiter, like somebody that actually has done it pretty much from the admission side, right? And then as well as from the student athlete side. So let's go ahead and get right into these questions. I've got like a little list here. So like in an ideal highlight video, right, submitted to you by a high schooler that's aiming to get recruited, what are you looking for? Like, what are some items that players submit that you're like, okay, like that was actually super helpful for my process? And then what's some that's just like, honestly, cool, but I don't really have any use for it.
That's a great question because especially during these times when you don't get to see a lot of showcases or individual events, film is very important.
Mhm.
A lot of times people think that film just needs to show you making shots. And that is not necessarily the truth. Yes, we want to know that you can shoot the ball because you can't win if the ball doesn't go in the hoop. But we want to see, how do you defend? Do your anticipation? Do you make the right play? Even a good pass on a drive, like finding the open person. I think that's very critical. Showing somehow demonstrating a way to show your basketball IQ, I think is a big part of it. I've seen people like ones that catch my eye sometimes is when somebody starts off their highlights with a charge. Like, okay,
Mm,
now we're showing something. A lot of people want to shoot the three, which is fine. Like I said, we want to know you can shoot, but it can't be the only thing we see in highlight. Um, and funny enough, minimize the bank shots.
yeah.
And I don't mean like a nice Tim Duncan bank shot. I mean you shoot it, it goes out the backboard. It's cool
Oh,
that it went in for you, maybe
yeah,
yeah, but it doesn't always say the message that you think you want to send.
it's true.
And you don't have to show that you can make a free throw. You can minimize those as well. Those are the things we see often that we're like, okay, let's go to the next clip.
Yeah, right. Yeah, man. And like that kind of segues a little bit into that second part of that question, which was like, what's some things that aren't really of use to you? You had addressed it perfectly. Like, I feel like a lot of the times that individuals submit footage to me, and maybe sometimes without saying it, they're expecting like flashy edits and animations and blur and flash and animation. Cool, bro. I don't know if Matt cares,
Right.
and I don't think you do. I mean, can you speak more on that?
So you need to be clear on some things, right? The number. I want to know what number and what color jersey you're wearing.
Right.
Sometimes people do it by coloring and pointing arrows, which is fine. Sometimes it doesn't have to happen every clip, like if it goes clip to clip to clip. But if I know your number and the team you're on, that's very critical part. I've gotten videos where they don't tell you, and
Yeah.
you're watching like, whatever, a few minutes or whatever you end up watching. You're like, I don't know who I was just watching.
Right. Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. And I think the big thing for me and my approach has really just been like, just dude, just tell me the story. Like, what is it? Like, what is your identity on the court
Right.
individually, and then how it fits into the dynamic of your team. So we'll get back into dynamics of the team in a moment. But a question that I thought of just pre-pandemic was, for you and your coaching staff, like how much of the recruiting process is going out on the road and watching games in person versus just like strictly the submitted videos?
During this particular recruiting cycle, it was kind of crazy. A lot of it was done through video, and secondarily, I did go to a few, like as myself individually, to an AAU practice here and there, because it was easy enough to distance yourself from anything and really get a good view of somebody you're looking at, or maybe a few people you're looking at. You can see for 2 hours straight of doing their skills or whatever they're doing. So that was super helpful. And plus, you're developing those relationships with the
Yeah.
AAU coaches, what I think is critical. But that and video recommendations by coaches. Like those are the bigger ways we got to see people. Thankfully, my staff, Jackie Bronca and Alex Berman, were doing a great job pre this, that we had a pretty good 21 database set, so we could really follow up with those people. But it's been a really interesting cycle as far as just seeing 21s and even 22s kind of feel the pressure and not, I won't say desperation, but kind of a little bit like, wow, I don't have this showcase year that I thought I was going to have. Now what do I do? And it's been interesting.
And I think even you just saying that toward the end there is like a little bit of encouragement for a high school student athlete. And it's like, okay, like, yes, it feels like the weight of my shoulders is, exactly there. But it's nice that you empathize there, right? That coaches,
Absolutely.
it's like, like, listen, like they're going through it too, and it isn't really just a one-way street. More on like the video component, what is like an adequate amount of footage for you to review? Like, do you prefer full games? Is it just the highlight clips? How long should those be? What do you think?
That's a great question. Length of the highlights, to be honest, I want to say it doesn't have to be that long, but I think it does.
Yeah.
If you show me 30 seconds of highlights, well, I think that's probably 30 seconds of your best plays, like over 4 years. Like, what are we looking at? So it should be somewhat substantial to demonstrate your whole, breadth of talent. What was the second part of that question?
Yeah, just like what, so there was the how
Oh,
long is a good amount, and then what do you prefer, full game footage or even just like
so highlights are always going to pique the interest, right? So from then on, when we make that next step, now I'm going to ask for full games because I
Nice.
want to see, okay, is that what I saw going to be actually demonstrated over a full game?
Mhm.
So that's usually the next step. Start with highlights and then give me a full game.
That's super helpful for me in my process, because it was actually a student athlete that sent me basically like a YouTube link. It was like a playlist of just full games. And it was great to have that amount to work with. Usually some individuals just send me like their huddle stuff and like it's basically cut up for me, which is great. Does the work for me. But like the full game lanes, I was like, man, I got about like 8 2.5 hour clips to run through right now. So interesting though to learn, because I mean I hadn't known that in that second step, that's how you guys go about it. From a recruiting process, like away from video, right? Just really just approach. I was thinking about this following question: how much of your recruiting process is shaped by like the personnel on your current roster? So is it we're about to graduate a senior, or we just had a senior graduate? Do you go out and say like, hey, we just need like maybe a forward that can shoot? Like what is that whole thinking there? How much of your recruiting process is shaped by the personnel of your current roster?
So in general, Division III is a little different because of there is no athletic scholarship. So we're a little bit less able to pigeon or not target specifically because you're not guaranteed, anything. You got to, work your tail off to get it. So my biggest philosophy, I'm going to try to find the best talent. And that doesn't just mean, basketball talent. It means your character. And, my whole catchphrase lately has been, talent gets you noticed, but your character will get you recruited. So that's a big part of that, is meeting your family or talking to your high school coach or AAU coach. So yeah, you'd love to find people that fit perfectly into what you're missing out of the roster moves and all that. But ideally that doesn't always work exactly like that. But if I'm finding the best, available talent or best people at that time, then I feel like we can make a system that'll work. And I was kidding with one of my incoming ball handler types, and I said, I'll play with 5 point guards. If we get 5 good point guards, like we'll figure it out. Like we'll just figure it out.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's always be my philosophy. Like, don't build something that's so tightly knit that you can't fit good, talented people into it because you're overfilled at this one position. So,
Of course. And like there was a good point that you made about just, the character component to it as well. Is there like a student athlete you could think of, like past or even present, where I mean, listen, you can only get so much of a grasp during that recruiting process. But like you thought that they were this type of character, but they're really that type of character. That could be good or bad, right? But it's just like, oh, like I thought you were gonna be a little bit more quiet, but you're actually way more outgoing than I thought you would be.
that happens a lot more than the other way around. Usually
Yeah.
they're with, they're with their parents on a visit or whatever. and they're really quiet, and maybe mom or dad are saying everything in the visit and they're not saying much, and then they get to campus and it's like, whoa, who's this person?
Right.
Usually that's a good thing, because I'm big on having personality, and I love that.
Yeah.
You always can, you try to be a good judge of who people are. You don't always nail it. There's been people that have fooled you one way and end up being wow. But most of the time, I think you nailed it pretty well. Most of the time, they're quiet in the recruiting process, and they come here and they're like, "Whoa, the training wheels are off. Here we are."
Yeah, no, I feel you. So that kind of segues a little bit into this question. This could be on the court, this could be off the court. Is there any like past student athlete you've had that kind of surpassed your expectations at that next level? Not necessarily that you were like, the talent's not there, the work ethic's not there. You could have thought the world of them. You just thought maybe, their ceiling was here, but they ended up playing like here. Is there anyone that kind of comes to mind for that?
Yes, and I've been wrestling to think whether I should name them or not.
You don't have to if you want to, but
I'm super proud of her, so I will. Like, the first name when I thought of this question was Leah Dowdy.
Yeah. Okay.
Who came in with, I had a feeling that this is where she was going to be, and I think at some point during her career, and I can tell you exactly, it was her sophomore year at Southern Maine. We had a good discussion about what we saw for her role. And I can tell you, I've never seen a student athlete go out and work as hard as she did to really redefine her role on the team to be a 2-year starter after that, which was not happening at that time. It wasn't there, but she honed her skills. She became an absolute, dead-eye shooter, and she really, like I said, she was a starter on a Elite 8 basketball team. So. She really, I think, superseded what I had for her, and so shame on me, but good for her.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, you talk about just shattering the glass ceiling. Like, it's pretty dope because, like, I think I came in for her junior year, was that 17, 18, then she graduated. No, she graduated 18, whatever it was. But basically, I only knew her as like you were saying, this sharpshooter, and I was like, damn, okay, word, she can shoot. I had no idea about the path that you just detailed. And it's funny though, like you talk about work ethic, how that can kind of manifest itself off the court. We're not going to go on like a huge Dowdy tangent here, but it shows some two-tone training. You know what I mean? For those who don't know, I mean, dude, she and her sister started this beginning of quarantine. I remember following just because like, oh, like, a friend started, so I'm absolutely glad to support. Maybe had like 300 followers when I first started following in like April. Dude, she's at like they're at like 8,000 now. So
yeah, she's
I mean, again,
it.
Yeah, that stuff transfers from the court super nicely for sure. I think maybe second to last question here. How can you tell that a student athlete is going to fit in with your team dynamic? Like, what are some boxes you check off almost? Like character traits you look for? What comes to mind for that?
So for me, and I tell it to them on visits whenever we're talking, to me, like, and it goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier with the highlight films and everything. When we're watching you play, and even interact with your parents on visits and everything like that, but we're watching you play. We're watching when you get pulled out of a game. How do you react at that time? And maybe it's not even a negative time. Maybe it's just your time to sit. But are you at the end of the bench, like just kind of like waiting to get back in the game and not really being there for your teammates? Or are you right next to the coaches, really figuring out what you did, cheering on your teammates? What's your body language after a missed shot? What's your body language if your teammate doesn't pass you the ball? There's, to me, and I said it before, the same thing with most people we know, if you're looking at this level, you can shoot the ball most of the time. But what else are you doing? Because when you get to college, especially your first year, typically you're not going to play a ton. Can you? Yes. Can you earn your time? Absolutely. But there's that chance that you are that role player because there's a senior in your role or whatever it is. So how are you going to be when you join this team? And I think some of that, to me, is how you treat your coach when you get pulled. Or are you always looking to the stands for your parents, coaching you, or are you looking to the coach for the coaching? Like, there's a lot of things that you don't really think of, but I can tell you when I talk to my peers in the field, we all look at when you get pulled out and how you are on the bench. I think that's a huge thing in your body language. It speaks volumes.
Yeah, I'm super happy you brought that up. I'm really big on body language, just from like a leadership standpoint. Like, let's say, I think there was one example that I wanted to jump in before, but I was like, let me not interrupt. It was like you make a perfect just dime of a pass and your teammate misses the shot. Are
Uh-huh.
you, yo, come on, bro? You like that's my assist. Or you just like, yo, like get the next one. Or if you just like miscommunication, player on the wing cuts, but then you just throw that straight out of bounds. Like you give them a high five on the way out, or you just like, yo, like why are you? So those are good examples for sure.
What
Um,
recently, and I want to recently I read a quote, and it's like body language never whispers; it always screams. Like it's what it is.
and you know, it's funny, like if you're aware of it and like what good and bad body language looks like, when you present bad, you catch it in yourself. And so like I'll give an example, like maybe last month I was playing in a baseball tournament and there's a ball up the middle. I was playing short. There's a ball up the middle and I flipped to second baseman. It was like on the run. It was a good flip, catchable flip, missed it. And in that moment, I was not indicative of my character, but I went and I was just like, and I caught myself immediately. I was like, yo, Kyle, like that's not you. You know what I mean? Like it's cool. Like you've dropped plenty of passes before, plenty of balls before, plenty of flips. So no, you catch it, but it's really, I think, just minimizing it, if anything.
100%. The fact that you caught it says more about you than if you didn't, right? That's it right there. Big
Yeah,
cognizant of it.
right, for sure. Let's talk a little bit D3. I think that a lot of student athletes, and I talked about this with Bruce Maxwell, proud D3 product, went to Birmingham Southern. Obviously, he's a professional now with an amazing path. But I think that a lot of the common thinking for high schoolers is D1 or bust, or are you going D3? Like what? So like you're going for high school for another 4 years? Like, but like for you, what's something you kind of want student athletes to know coming out of high school, just to know about D3?
So like I've had people that have told me they're gonna, go try to get the scholarship, and I would never begrudge anybody a free education. Like that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this we have one coming in this year that's a transfer from a D1 program this year, because she just wanted to give it a shot, maybe getting more playing time, or whatever it is, or maybe it's an educational choice. But D3 to me is highly competitive. I remember playing when we did play in the NCAA's, and I remember playing that Amherst team in the Elite Eight, and that team could have competed at a very high level in D2, if not even like mid-major D1. That was an impressive team with a lot of talent, well coached, obviously. But D3 has had a misnomer of being, like you said, it's grade 13 or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, if you watch high-level D3 basketball, I think it's impressive. I mean, if you watched our men's basketball team a few years ago with Jordan Resendiz on the team, like he's playing professional in Europe right now. Like he was a stud. And I tell it to some people that have had that issue, like, well, you can leave a legacy and put your name on a banner here. I think that's pretty cool. Maybe, and instead of maybe trying to break in somewhere else. But like I said, I'll never begrudge anybody for trying to get a free education. I completely understand. But I think D3 basketball, and I think we play at a higher level. I just think it's really good basketball, that I think, a lot of people have fun playing. I don't know. You play for the love of the game in D3, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, you said legacy, like that straight up gave me goosebumps because it made me think more of just like the legacy I left at Wheaton as a student. Like I walked onto a top 25 baseball program, which I'm very proud of myself for, but that never really comes about if I hadn't shifted my thinking about it early on, later in high school. But like now, like D3 is cool too. And you can put in that work too. Like they're like, oh, so like you're basically a club team. Nah, bro. Practice 6 times a week, 5 lift, all that. Get your own work, captain's practice, aka show up. Not then I don't know what to tell you. But no, to kind of wrap here a little bit.
But I don't want to even break in. But remember when we just had our own baseball guy get signed by the the Red
Yeah.
Sox with Nate Tellier. So like D3 has its own path to different ways. It obviously isn't. You don't have a bunch of D3 people in the NBA, but there's definitely a path there for extra after college playing.
Mhm.
Like I said, I think it's obviously a legit league to play in.
I have a lot of followers that have come over from this dude, Devontae Friga, who was a 4-year basketball player for the University of Mount Union. And obviously, I mean, they're a really gifted men's program,
Yeah.
but I mean, he's got several overseas offers and he's chosen one. But I mean, like it just goes to show. And he's somebody content creating wise, like is really good for just that, D3 perspective, because he do like a lot of game day vlogs and just like, getting on the bus, lack of resources, going to Subway. So it's just like truly the grind. And I was like, yeah, like that's like that hits home for me because of really having been in it as an athlete, but also as a almost like a faculty member, pretty much.
Yep.
So, to begin to wrap here, though, just general like recruiting do's and don'ts for, if not the prospective student athletes, for their families too, because I do think that this content again will provide a lot of value for them, but just general recruiting do's and don'ts for both of those parties.
Well, as a student athlete, don't think that every coach is going to find you. We do our best to try to see as many people as we can and target as many people as we can, but we can't be everywhere, especially in not to downplay our, but D3, we are a smaller staff. We try to do as much as we can, but promote yourself. Like it is a time in the earth, like where self-promotion at this point is critical, and especially this year. So reach out to coaches, follow up with coaches, make sure your film is well done. Somebody right here could help you out. But you have to be able to promote yourself and carry yourself. Secondly, for parents, on visits, if you're on a visit with a coach, let the student athlete talk a little bit. Don't answer all their questions for them. Let them try to just demonstrate their personality, like we had mentioned before. Let them feel if they could be a fit for that with that coaching staff and how that works. In the stands, don't coach your kids too much. Let them get coaching, let them make mistakes, let them work through the process. It's very hard when they're always looking at you and not really in the game. And we do notice it, and it's tough. But for the student athlete, just represent yourself, your school, your program well, because it is bigger than you. It is about your teammates first and foremost. These are your family moving forward, and for us, that's what we preach: having your family, that they're 4 or 5 years down the road, you're still proud to be a Corsair for life, and that you're still hanging out with your old teammates, and you're giving back to your team now. With this year, we had Alicia Coutil come in and do a pregame speech. Like, I think that stuff is really what it's all about. Basketball is a big part, but everything else is also, it's got to be a well-rounded experience and a lifetime commitment for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny. I was thinking about how the bio for my media account is telling stories through sport. And obviously what I appreciate the most about sports, any sport, is how it is a metaphor for life. And everything that you were saying about the recruiting process, that is super applicable to life, dude. Like you're, 15 trying to get recruited by D3, D2, D1, or you're 25 and if it's the networking and just making good relationships and just being persistent along the way, even without necessarily expecting something back. I think that that's like a big part. So for me, that was a big takeaway. If before we hop off here, if you have any key takeaways for any high schoolers or even just, people just overall that you want to share, whether it be the recruiting process or just, sport overall.
Well, you just kind of nailed it. And sport is life, and character matters. Especially now more than ever. Like, have empathy for your fellow people. Like, do the right thing. Like, you can't say it enough. Just be the person you would want to be friends with or be around.
Yeah.
And I'm able, if you are an interested student athlete, I have to put a plug in, right?
Yeah, of course.
Feel free to reach out to us over at UMass Dartmouth.
Yeah. No, absolutely. This was great. I am going to kill this recording here. We'll hop on. We'll stay on for a couple minutes more. But appreciate you, Matt. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.